All right, so it looks like we are live. Yes, all right, so good afternoon. My name is Brandon Fick, and I am the ICT2641 E-Tutor, and welcome to the Assignment 2 and the Exam Prep live stream. All right, now the purpose of this live stream is to give you some insight into how to approach Assignment 2. If you watched the previous one, the Assignment 1 one, the content I feel is probably going to be very similar for that part, but the main draw probably, assignment 2 was in July, I believe. It took a while for the marks to come out. The main draw is probably going to be the exam prep. I will be giving some tips on exam prep and basically telling you what to expect and what you can do in order to pass the module. Well, hopefully pass the module. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have to put the effort in. All right, now I do have the WhatsApp group open in front of me, and I do have my eyes on the live chat. So if you do have any questions as we go along, don't hesitate to ask anything. I'll stop and address. All right. Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to read the memo to you in this live stream. I don't do that. I don't think there's much point in doing that, especially with how the format was on this year's assignments. I think that the memo is extremely good and you can go through it on your own and, gather the same understanding as if I were to just read it to you. Instead, I'm going to talk about how to approach the questions, but we'll get to that. All right, so this is your Mayunisa. I mean, you have to have had seen this by now, right? So we're going to be talking about assignment 2 first, and we'll move on to the exam prep portion later on in the live stream. I'm not intending to do a long session today. I'm aware that everybody's very busy. I mean, I don't like keeping people too long in these sessions. I just like saying the most important stuff. And if you have further talking topics or you want to ask me more questions, you can always email me. But all right, this is your Mayunisa. This is your main, I call this the lecturer site, right? This is the main site. Wait, no, this is my one. I'm getting confused. This is the lecture site, right? So they made an announcement talking about the marks, and another one that's very important is this exam guidelines, but I'll get to this later. They talked about the marking as well. But if you are looking for the memos, press this additional resources on the side tab, right? The sidebar. And then you navigate. This is the exam stuff. I probably won't go to all this stuff, but I'll emphasize how important it is on later on in the stream. But these ICT2641 2010 tutorial letter 1 and tutorial letter 2 is basically what it is. This is code for these things. So this is assignment 1 memo and this is assignment 2 memo. I went through assignment 1 in the previous stream, right? So we're going to go ahead and open this. Downloads, open it in Chrome. And then this is the memo. I already have this open in PDF, so it's a little bit better for stream, bigger on the screen. All right. I'm not going to go through these questions. I'm going to tell you outright, the memo is very good. This is why I don't think that I need to go to them. It's because the memo itself is very good. So this was assignment 2, right? This was your assessment in July. Assignment 2 covered chapters 8 to 14 of the textbook, with chapter 12 excluded. It mostly comprised of it was all short questions. They were all between 2 to 4 marks, right? And the tricky part was that, look, I didn't write the assignment. I'm not able to write the assignment. I look at things and listen to reports, right? So from my assumptions, the questions appeared out of order. And they weren't necessarily marked in terms of which chapter the question was referring to, right? If I'm wrong, please forgive me. This is just my understanding. This was done intentionally to combat cheating and sharing answers during the assignment period. The assignment period was 1 week long, right? So you had, from July or whenever, you had 1 week to get through all of these questions. I believe everybody got the questions, it's not in the same order. You had to get through all these questions and then, submit at the end of the week. If I recall, feedback from assignment 1 was that there wasn't enough time. Students were struggling with the questions, etc. Let's take a different perspective. I want to point this out early on in today's session so that we can think about it as we go through this. I said this in the previous one as well. what did I just say? I said questions out of order, right? All short questions, and you have a timed period to answer them. A lot of these questions is factual stuff. Define, mention, briefly, discuss, elaborate, describe, etc. That's part of the grammar. I'll get to that in a second. But doesn't this assignment look to you like a mock exam? Don't you think it looks a lot like an exam to me, Interesting. Do I need to emphasize that more? This looks a lot like an exam to me. The exam format I'm expecting to be very similar to this, actually. So this is already a very fat part of exam prep that they just gave you, and they gave the memo to you. But I'll emphasize this more later on. All right. So with that being said, the perspective that I want to change is that this is why it's combined. This isn't just assignment 2 review. Because if I did that, it was just going to be assignment 1 again with, slightly different content. And I said I wasn't going to read the memo to you, so it was just going to be the same session. But the perspective that I want you to have going through the session is that this is an exam. Let's think of this as if it was an exam, right? So how would you prepare for this? Let's say, obviously, if it was an actual exam, the biggest difference would be the time limit, right? And obviously the content. This only covered chapters 8 to 14. If you had an exam, it would cover chapter 1 to 14. And the time limit would be different in the sense that you would only have 2 hours, 2-hour session to complete. There will obviously be less questions and it will be more manageable for 2 hours. But the format is essentially the same. Short questions, out of order. The sort of predefined anti-cheating stuff like that. And look at the questions themselves. Now, this is now, see, I have a little sort of checklist of what we're going to get through today. Now, the next section that I want to talk about is how to approach, I want to say exam, but let's say how to approach an assessment in the format of this. Now, you see, that's a more branching term that would cover assignment 2 and exam, even though we were going to assume that they're similar, right? Okay. So the first one I have written down is look at the mark. This is when you're going through the paper and you're going through the exam. You're reading the questions before you start, formulating your answer, before you want to write down what it is you want to say. There's a few checks that I like to think about. Turn it into a more systematic approach as opposed to, you read a question and you answer. It's not that simple. This is what tertiary education is, right? So with the premise of how this assessment was laid out, right, I would say that a very first one would be identifying, it was out of order, right? Identifying where in the textbook, what they're talking about, basically. So we're just going to scroll randomly. Let me just close this so it's bigger. You just let's say you open and your first question was this, bam. The business analyst had to consider the context when developing solutions. The context of, it's all highlighted now. The context of the organization and the project will provide the basis for deciding how any business changes are to be delivered. What are the key factors in business analysts that's been taken into account when working with the context of the organization? So say you paging through the paper, you just get a question like this. Now you would have to be able to discern what they're talking about just from this question. What chapter is this? Where in the chapter? How do I know what they're talking about? What's the context for this question? It's chapter 13, right? Obviously, you have the answer in front of you. It's a little bit harder to do this with a memo. I usually used to cover up the answer as I went through the question. Just some of the stuff. I used to look at the question like this. The answer's off screen. I don't get baited into, whatever. And so that would be the first part of, being able to answer the question. Identifying what they're talking about, and then recalling information pertaining to that chapter. That's how you do it. And then from then on, the next one that I have written down here is, this is how we actually, once you know what they're talking about, the context, then you go about, answering the question. So the next phase is then reading the question carefully. So the most important 2 that I've written here is 1, look at the mark allocation, right? 2 marks. 3 marks, 3 marks, 3 marks, etc. I think they only go up till 4 marks in this one. In chapter 1, in assignment 1, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was all 2 mark questions. Actually, I think I have this here. I think it was all 2 mark questions, I believe. Yes, I think so. All right. So the reason why the mark allocation is important is because it's an indication of the amount of content that you need to provide in your answer in order to obtain the marks, right? The way that I think about this is points, right? You have to give 2 points to earn each of the 2 marks. And sure enough, if you look at the memo, 2 marks, 2 bullet points, right? 3 marks, 3 bullet points. Let's see if there's a 4 mark one. See if it holds true. 3 marks. If there's more in the memo, usually they give you, I'm probably going to come back to this a little bit later. But the way that I used to, I used to be a student, back in the day. We don't talk about how long ago that was, right? But the way that I used to answer questions was, if someone was marking my paper, I would assume that they have the memo in front of them and then they compare your answer with what is in the memo, right? I would try to structure my answer, not necessarily in bullet points, but in a way that's, concise and structured in a way where they can just look at this, read it, and then, compare with the memo and say, all right, this guy knows what he's talking about. Let's give him the 3 marks, give him the 2 marks, whatever. So what I'm trying to say is, don't write too much. I don't know how it works, how the markers do it these days, but back then they would only read your first 2 points. If you wrote more than that, it wasn't considered, even if it was right, So you answering a 2 mark question, you give 2 points, concisely and to the point. You say, okay, briefly describe, business activity model. You say, this is what it is. And then you briefly describe it. Essentially, you see what I'm saying. The next point that I have on how to approach questions, alongside with the mark allocation, right, is to look at the grammar or the words that they use in the sentence to sort of know how to formulate your answer. Now, this sounds a little bit more complicated, but essentially, I think of this as like, look at the English that they use, right? Briefly describe, mention, identify, like pick out keywords. What is? It is important to think about it. It says briefly explain. Now you see this, essentially, this will dictate the kind of detail that you would need to go into in order to obtain a point for each of the marks in the questions, right? If it's define, if it's, briefly explain, etc. These are, I used to break them down into, I don't know how to say this in a way that makes sense, but there was like tiers, briefly describe, mention, list, define, etc. That's like tier 1, These are sort of the simpler type questions, right? And then it's because it's long questions and short questions, but they only did short questions in here, so it's a little bit harder to explain. But there's now the next tier of language would be elaborate, discuss. In the questions that I formulated, the sample questions on that, I did use a little bit of this language, so we can go through that with the same mindset and try and pick some of that out. But I don't think they use this because this is, the short question module. Briefly explain. This is define, essentially. In 3 points, briefly explain. You see, it keeps appearing. Briefly explain, identify, mention, list. You get the idea. Briefly explain again. You get the idea. Like the grammar that they use, I think of it like exam language. The English that they use it repeats itself, and it's sort of, this is what you need to look for. So when you know, you don't have to necessarily just apply this to this module, but when good exam advice is when you get posed with a question, look at the mark allocation and look at the English that they use. If it's a 6 mark discuss question, you got to go into some detail. But if it's a 6 mark list question, you just have to put the names down. So yes, that's how you would think about this. All right. Now the next point that I've written here is answer in your own words and answer concisely. Now, the concise part, I already touched up on that, right? You know, look at the English that they use, look at the mark allocation, and then be concise, be to the point. Don't fluff, don't give too much information, describe yourself clearly. Let the marker know that you know what you're talking about, basically. So, yes, I can't really describe it much better than that. And answer in your own words. This goes hand in hand with don't copy the textbook. Can I emphasize that again? Don't copy the textbook. Can I emphasize that even one more time? Don't copy the textbook, man. Don't copy the textbook. I like reading this line. It's my favorite line. Don't copy the textbook. And don't copy other students. Look, the practitioners of this module, you know, the lecturers, the tutor, even myself, a couple of years ago, we used to have long questions in place of short questions, right? And then it was, to give you a little bit more context, it was theory-based questions. They would give you a case study, and then we would talk about, you know, how would you apply the knowledge that you learn in the module to a real-life situation? They don't do this year. You don't have to worry about this for now. I feel like you would learn more, but anyway. So students would copy the textbook so frequently, and the thing is, we go through the textbook to set the learning materials, and we go through it in very great detail. So you see where I'm going with this, right? A student thinks they're clever, they quote the textbook, they change a little bit of the, you know, they paraphrase in inverted commas, they change a little bit of the dialogue, you know, mix the sentences around. I can quote this textbook from my head, man. Why are you doing this? You copying the textbook. Come on, man. It's not that hard. The way that I used to think about this, right? We all learn from the textbook, but our understanding is not all defined in the same way, right? So we read the textbook. When we're posed with a question, you close the textbook. Then you answer the question in your own words. This is how you bypass this if you think that, nah, wait, Mr. Brandon, the textbook is so dense, I don't think I'm able to put this in my own understanding without, you know, formulating it in the same way that the textbook does. Just do this. Read through the coursework, read through the theory, close the textbook, answer the question. No doubt it'll be in your own words. That's all you need to do. All right. The final part of this section that I have here in a very big block is actually study. So just to recap, this was like the how to approach answering questions in a summative format, with emphasis on, I guess, short questions, how it is in this paper, right? Is you look at the mark allocation, you look at the grammar, the English that they use, the keywords, right? Briefly explain, mention, elaborate, discuss, etc. And then you answer the question in a concise way that would net you the marks, and you answer in your own words without copying the textbook. And then the last one is actually study. Actually study in a big block written here in my little cue card book, right? Actually study. So I think if we had to talk about you know, studying methods and stuff like that, it's gonna bloat the session a little bit too much. But this is, you know, tertiary education is part of the hands-off approach. You're supposed to kind of be familiar with your information. You're like everybody's individual information intake by now, and you should be able to understand how you learn, essentially. I used to learn by making notes, written notes. I felt like if I was able to write down the points in my own handwriting and then read it, I would be, you know, more inclined to understand the topics in the textbook as opposed to just reading. Some people learn by listening, some people learn by reading, some people need visual aids. Whatever it is you need to do, you know, whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever you resonate with the most, that's how you should, you know, structure your study approach around. But what I'm trying to say basically is actually study, you know, written in the big block, it means you need to put in the work. You're not gonna, you know, without any prior knowledge, you're not gonna open this assignment and they're gonna talk about why would a BA consider share values when conducting a gap analysis for an organization for 3 marks? You're not just gonna, you know, wing this. If you think you are, you're gonna fail. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. You should know by now, man. You should know better. Just study, please. Just do it. All right. Now, the next section I got is exam similarities and how to prepare for an exam. I do cover this again. I like emphasizing things because I do it on purpose. I say the same things like frequently because that is also part of, learning and studying, repetition. And I also like to do it because I like pointing out important things that, you should know. All right. So for one, I am expecting the exam format to be very similar to the assignments. To the point that I wouldn't even be surprised if the same questions that appear in the assignment would appear in the exam. I don't think I need to emphasize that anymore, right? I say that really slowly on purpose. Yes. So we'll come back to this when we talk about how to structuring your study approach for the exam in particular, right? Okay. The difference, I talked about this, the difference between the exam and the assignments is there's time limit and there's pressure. It's a single session and you're supposed to answer all the questions. You can't take a break. This assignment was over a week period. You could take a break, come back tomorrow. You do a chapter a day, however you wanted to structure it. In the exam, you got to sit there and you got to answer. You got to answer the whole thing. So you got to learn to recall information under some level of pressure, some level of stress. I mean, the best way is to not be stressed, and that comes from confidence, right? And the best way to be confident is you know your work really well, right? Which comes back to the thing written in the big block that says actually study, right? But yes. All right, so this was just like a very short section. Now, the next one, which is probably going to form the biggest part, is, once again, I've touched on these things, but it's how to prepare for the exam. And then after that, we'll just go over some very brief exam information, and then that'll be it for the session. I don't want to take this too long. Hopefully, I'll get through this in 10 minutes. We've been live for 20 now. Okay. All right. So, go through every chapter in the textbook. Okay? Let me just pull this up. Right. So, how to prepare for the exam. This is now the next section. I should probably make some PowerPoints. I was a little bit rushed. Didn't have power for a while, but anyway. Okay. So, like I said, whatever study approach resonates with you the most, do this as you go through the textbook, right? The textbook is the lifeblood. At the same time, if you feel like the textbook is a little bit too dense, you can navigate, I got your back, man. I got you covered. You navigate to the E-Tutor, the E-Tutor site for this module. This was the one that I was managing, right? Talk about my background, whatever. You navigate to the bottom of these blocks. You can also see it here on the sidebar. Navigate to this thing called chapter slides, man. Open up these chapter slides. Chapter 1. You feel like the textbook is a little bit too dense. You open one of these. Here you are presented with sort of a PowerPoint slides that, in effect, it highlights the most important part of each chapter in the textbook. Now, I'm going to tell you, as useful as this may sound, at the same time, this is insufficient on its own. Don't use this only to study. This isn't enough. Look, we just give you a diagram, and then we want you to use this as an aid. We're sort of highlighting what's important in a chapter, and then you identify this, and then you look it up in the textbook, and then you use this to study. So this is how you use this, right? This is the chapter slides. I can agree with you that textbook is very dense. It's very dense. It's very wordy, it's very in-depth is what I'm trying to say. They go into a lot of detail. And to gain an understanding of business analysis, you don't necessarily need to understand the work on the exact same detail. But that's where this comes in. This shows you what's important in the textbook, right? Okay, so make your notes, basically learn like this, right? This is your intake of the theory, your intake of the core knowledge needed for the module, right? And now the next thing that I have in my section called How to Prepare for the Exam is go through assignment 1 and 2 again to test yourself. Now, remember when I started the session and I said, hey, assignment 1 and 2 are kind of exam format, guys? Yes. They are, basically, yes. And again, I've been dropping hints the whole time, saying some questions might appear, so them giving you this is where you find them on the main module site. You navigate to additional resources, right? It's these two things. These were the codes: tutorial letter 1 and tutorial letter 2. I think they're officially called. You navigate here and you attempt these as if they were the exam at your own pace. I mean, you don't have to sort of emulate the same pressure that you would have in an exam, but please go through these again. This is going to be very helpful in understanding how to, in helping you pass the module. Let's just say it like that. Go through them again once you've studied it, once you've done your exam level studying, go through these again. And then as like a bonus thing, you could look at, wait, I don't think you can look at your previous answer, could you? They don't not give you that in your past paper. That's the problem with online format. Anyway, yes. Go through assignment 1 and 2 again to test yourself. This is good because they have the module answers in, the structured format with bullet points and everything as well. I just got a message here. Abandoned, so basically what is in the slides is definitely what's coming out in exam questions. That's not correct. We just have to go through it in textbook. No. Just to clear this up, the stuff that's in the slide is what's important in each of the chapters. This doesn't necessarily correlate to what's going to be what's in the exam, right? Think of it this way. This is going to be a long-winded think of it this way, but just bear with me. Back when I was studying, right, the way that I would make my notes is, in essence, kind of similar to the slides. But the way that you do this is you go through the textbook. You go through a chapter in the textbook, right? You try to identify topics in ways where they look like they could be asked in an exam. That's not to say that the lecture slides that I've provided to you will be the same, right? This is the purpose of you making the notes. If you see some very important definition that basically defines a chapter, this is probably important. You should make a note of it. If you see a diagram that has 6 bullet points below it talking about, some model that seems important, you should probably make a note of it. You know what I mean? You just have to have like that sensor when you're going through. I hope this answers the question. It's what coming out as exam questions. I'll come back to this later because I kind of structured the questions that I made for the module in the same way that I just said, where things in each chapter it can be asked like an exam question. So if you flip it around, if you look at the questions that I provided, the stuff that's asked there is important, is what I'm trying to say. Hope that answers your question. All right, where was I? Go through assignment 1 and 2 again to test yourself. Yes, I said this. Now, it's actually the next topic. Go through the study material in MyUnisa also to test yourself. All right. So we come back to the E-Tutor site that I manage, right? Now, if you navigate down to the bottom, or also on the sidebar, there's these two things: study material and then study material in the PDF form. Let's go ahead and open the PDF. The content is the same. I just uploaded a PDF version just for, study offline purposes. But if you open this, you'll be met with, chapters 1 to 14, excluding chapter 12, review questions, right? We're going to go ahead and let's just press 1. Open the PDF, download the PDF, and then make the zoom a little bit better so everybody can see. Right. Now, these were my rendition if I had to set an exam for this module. In essence, that's basically what it is. So, back to what we said earlier, about how to approach questions. Look at the English, look at the mark allocation. The difference here is that I think the module answers that I give you are not in-depth enough, though, unfortunately. I didn't have all the time in the world to do it. It was just kind of like, an idea of what you should be answering. If your answers differ, you can always, send me an email and then we can discuss. It's kind of the purpose of this, was to create a discussion around the questions, which you probably don't really get that vibe from the PDF, but I mean, that's not the point. But the reason why I say that this would test you a little bit more is because this includes long questions as well. So back to the English that they use thing that I keep bringing up. Short questions are list, define, identify, mention, briefly explain, usually between 1 to 4 marks. So see, define, outline, list, and then from once you pass question 5 in all of these, the structure is the same, except chapter 14. I think there's only 5 questions that one. Once you pass this, you're in long question territory. See, discuss 8 marks. Now, this is a little bit more intensive. This was back when we were doing written exams. You would see a question like this, right? Discuss 4 core responsibilities for business analysis. So essentially, what the discuss means is that I used to think of them as an incorporation of, the English thing that I keep bringing up. So discuss would be you have to briefly define and you would have to give more information, name and define. So see, that's basically what's happening here. So investigate business systems, become familiar, etc. Yes, and then see, list and describe, combination, illustrate, drawing diagrams for lots of marks, discuss again. And then I tried to include a practical question. Some of these are a little bit confusing, but this was because there had to be practical questions in the past. Sort of the idea of the module has kind of gravitated away from this into just, short questions. So this is supposed to test how would you apply your knowledge that you have gained in a real life situation. Always question 10. Yes. So yes, please go through these as if they were like past papers. We don't have past papers for you. This is the point of the session, is that I'm saying we don't have past papers for you, but you have more than enough content that can help you pass the module in the form of the assignments and these 13 sets of questions that I've prepared. I think this is sufficient. If you need more, if you have trouble with the concepts, like I said, you can always email me. All right, let's get back to this. The other one is allocate time. This module is dense. I feel like I've said this already. The textbook is dense, yes, we've discussed this. But what I mean by allocate time is that don't wait until you're a week away from the exam before starting. I don't think that's enough time, to be honest. Don't wait until the night before this. Don't do this. This module is kind of made to get you. It's one of those. It's one of those where you're like, it's fine. I did okay in the assignments. It's fine. And then, the week of, you're sweating. Don't do this. Don't set yourself up like this. Don't do that. And then the last one is ask questions if you need help. All right. I think that pretty much covers up all the, the in-depth exam-related topics. Now, let me just check the chat and the WhatsApp group. No more questions. All right. So now the last section that I want to close off with, how are we on time? 35 minutes. All right. Is the exam information. All right. So we're going to navigate to, the main module site. We're going to examine this announcement. There's 2 of them. Just look at the latest one. Exam guidelines. This is extremely important. Please go to this. I am reasonably sure that all lecturers of all your modules are telling you to go to this. Please just go to this. This tells you, how to conduct yourself in the exam, what to expect, how to go about things. Exam etiquette. Please go to this. Go to this. Understand it. Be safe. Be aware. And then please pass your module. That's what I want from you. All right. So, like I said, they link you to additional resources, and then they give you all this. Please go through all of the stuff. It's so important. Go through the stuff. Please. If the announcement wasn't important enough, I'm telling you again, please go through the stuff. All right. The other one is keep up to date with, the exam timetable. Don't ask me when the exam is, man. Don't ask me when the exam is, because you have this. Let me increase the zoom for everybody. Navigate to your MyUnisa. Log in, examinations, exam dates, and timetable. Don't email me, ask me when's the exam. Do this. This won't work for me because I'm not a student. But yes, do this. Your exam timetable, and then keep up to date with this. Stay abreast of this. This is yes, and this is obvious. I mean, I'm saying this because last year Last year, someone misread the exam dates and then tried to make it my problem by saying, "Why didn't you tell me when the exam was?" It's part of my assumptions that you know when the exam is. I don't have to tell you when the exam is. You know when it is. You're supposed to know when it is. Don't ask me when the exam is, man. You're supposed to know. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Please read the guidelines. Oh, yes. Another one is I will be unavailable during the exam. I am not allowed to help students during the exam. You're not allowed to help each other during the exam, by the way. So don't expect me to especially help with tech issues during the exam. I'm not capable of this. I will also not be available during the exam. It's just, I mean, yes, I don't have to explain. It's how it is. This is your chance to pass, basically. I can't be there. I'm there to build you up so that you can pass. I can't hold your hand in the final moments. That's when you have to prove yourself. That's how the education works, right? Okay, and the last thing that I want to emphasize is don't try to do dishonest things in the exam. Don't try to get in touch with other students. Don't try and open the Google. Don't do this. Don't waste the opportunity, man. Don't be like this. Just pass, please. Study and pass. That's what we want from you. That's why I'm in the session. That's what I'm doing right here. I'm giving you all this insight so that you can study and pass. And the last one is good luck for your exams. Good luck for your exams. If there's no more questions, I think that's going to be it for the session. But as always, do I always do this? I don't know. I should, but I like to do a synopsis at the end to just like round up everything that we talked about and get you to think about it as you leave the session. All right. So in the beginning, we talked about assignment 2, right? We talked about that it covered chapters 8 to 14. It was all short questions and they appeared out of order, and it kind of simulated a mock exam. And you can use it to study for an exam since the formula and the format is probably going to be very similar. I would recommend you do this. Right, now the next part I talked about this a lot. I reiterate this a lot, is how to approach a question, right? I talked about look at the mark allocation, you look at the kinds of words, you look at the structure of the sentence, you look for the keywords. It's a verb. Elaborate, identify. It's a verb. Just look for the verb that prompts you to do something, and then answer according to that in order to know how much detail that you need to give in order to obtain the marks according to the mark allocation. And then structure your answer concisely. Don't give too much text. Be to the point. Answer clearly. And don't copy the textbook or other students. We will know. I've been through this textbook, so this is my third year of the module, man. I've been through this textbook so many times. I'll know if you're paraphrasing or whatever. Don't do this. Answer in your own words. All right. And then, oh yes, you will need to study to the point where you can deduce what a question is, what's it referring to? Someone just they ask you a random question and you're going to say, okay, now that's chapter 4. That's investigation techniques. And I need to be able to discuss qualitative and quantitative investigation techniques, perhaps provide an example. I don't think they ask for examples, so can we at least get a memorandum for the exam? Do you mean a past paper? Because if so, past papers are not on the table. I don't think you can expect any, which is why I want to say that basically you kind of have a past paper in the form of assignments 1 and 2, because the format is going to be similar. I'm reasonably sure. The format is going to be similar, and it's going to be similar conditions as well, answering in sort of the same way is what I'm trying to say. The way it feels will be the same. So if you can get familiar with answering those questions, then you should be fine. And if you do want, I think that the questions that I've created, all right, let's navigate to that E-Tutor site, right? Go down to the bottom, open other ones, time, study material. And then you'll see all chapters. If you don't like how it's ordered here, you can press one of these and it will order them by name. although it uses this sorting where 9 is anyway. And then in here we will, we talked about this already. But the reason why I think that this is a little bit more intensive than the not to discourage you, mind you, it's more intensive. So I think that you would actually gain better understanding from the work if you went through this. Is because it asks long questions which prompt you to have more understanding of the coursework so that you can provide better and more detailed answers in the form of long questions such as define for 6 marks, outline for 6 marks, illustrate, okay. And then a practical question. These ones I wouldn't think that they're that important this time around for this, for 2022 is what I'm trying to say. Before we had theory questions, and this was very important. But yes, all right, just to continue the synopsis of everything we went through. Format may be similar. Yes, I said this. There's a time limit and there's some pressure. Calm down. You ever been in an exam? You've studied so hard. There's so much writing on this one paper. You have to pass. Calm down. Calm down. Relax. Take your time. If you're under pressure, if you spooked, if you're sweating, if daddy doesn't, daddy's he's gonna give you the puck slide. You know what that is. Your parents are not going to be happy with you failing this module is what I'm trying to say. Calm down. If you panicked, you can forget things that you know. Calm down. Take it easy. Deep breaths. Read the questions carefully. Structure your answers carefully. And, relax. Not to the point where you answer too slowly. Be aware of the time, but just relax is what I'm trying to say. All right. And then the next section was how to prepare for the exam. Go through all the chapters carefully. Make notes. Study in the way that's most natural to you. Get an understanding of the coursework. And then go through assignments 1 and assignment 2 again so you can test yourself. And then if you need further testing, go through these study material review questions that I've created. Is the exam open book? Please ask the lecturer. And why do you have that smile? Please ask the lecturer. I don't think it is. Thanks, you've been looking for the info. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing the messages in the group now. Is it closed book? I believe so. I will try to clarify. Oh, yes. There's one other thing. Like I said, this was my 3rd year of the module, right? I have done sessions like this in the past. The problem is that it can present a sort of a mix match in content. But I think it would be helpful to watch those if you need, additional reference material for studying. You watch because the assignments and stuff was different last year and the year before. If you were to, watch a session where I review those, I used to go into a lot more detail because they did have long questions. It could be beneficial to you, but at the same time, you need to watch it with an understanding that this is, the assignments are different. The coursework is the same, and the understanding that you can gain is the same. But it's not exactly, it's not 100% relevant to this module. But I will ask for permission from the lecturer if I can post that stuff. And if I get the green light, I will make an announcement and also put it in the discussion forums as well. Yes. All right. Module is dense. Allocate your time, budget your time. Keep up to date with the exam dates. Please read the exam guidelines. Let's open that up again. Please read these things, the exam guidelines. I'll be unavailable during the exam. And then don't try dishonest things. And then we've wrapped up. That's just about everything that I have to cover today. 45 minutes, not too bad. Yes, I think I've said everything that I need to say. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to email me. You can contact me on WhatsApp as well, but I prefer email because, it's obvious if you think about it, right? The higher ups don't look at WhatsApp, so they don't know what I'm doing on there. If it's email correspondence, then everybody can see what I'm doing and it looks like I'm, it counts for work hours, let's say. But if WhatsApp is more convenient for you, that's fine. And yes, good luck for your exams. Please pass. Don't be sitting in next year's sessions with me again. I mean this in the nicest way, but let's not meet again. What I'm trying to say is pass and then, keep me in your memories. Don't repeat the module. Don't see me again next year. This is the best motivator I can give you. But all the best. Good luck. I hope that this session was helpful. I hope that this was insightful. Back when I was a student, I really wanted someone to explain the inner workings of how to answer exam questions to me. And then I kind of, I try to reverse engineer from memos and stuff like that. All this hard effort. Just listen to the things I say. Listen carefully. If you don't understand anything, you want more insight, like I said, email me. I'm available. And yes, I hope that this session was helpful. And good luck for the exam. I'm just trying to think if there's any other announcements I need to make, but I don't think so. Anyway, we're catching on time, so I'm going to go ahead and end the session here. This was Brandon Fick, the ICT2641 E-Tutor. This was the assignment to, the sheep in wolf's clothing. It was actually just an exam prep live stream talking about how to pass the exam. I hope that it's been helpful. And I probably won't do another session like this for the year. I think this will be it. But yes, I hope that you pass your exams. Good luck.